Hello, everybody. How you doing today? I hope you're having a good day. Here in the States, we're celebrating Thanksgiving, Turkey Day. This has been a tradition that's been going on for, 200 some odd years, and about 240, really. And so the first president, he set this day as a day of proclamation to give thanks. And the thanks was to go to God because God has blessed them with a new nation and new responsibilities. And so Thanksgiving is here for us to remember to thank God. But we're also told in 1 Timothy 2 that we need to pray all the time and offer our thanksgiving to God. And so, yes, and Philippians 4 tells us to do not fear or be anxious for anything, but with prayer and supplication make your request known to God with thanksgiving. So, yes, it's that day. Now, let's get into the lesson. And it's a simple one, but what happens to our soul at death? Over the years, I've heard many people explain various ideas about what happens at our death. And do we go straight to heaven or hell, or do we just go to a waiting place that is a kind of a preview of the end result of our judgment? And it can be a difficult question because the answer is virtually impossible to pinpoint unless you study all that the Bible teaches on this subject. Some people read one or two verses and they draw their conclusion when there's quite a few verses that do talk about this subject, and so we have to read them all to get the idea. Just like any doctrine in the Bible, we got to read everything the Bible says. Otherwise, some people get the wrong idea. Some people read John 3:16 concerning salvation, and they think that's all there is you need to do is believe. But the Bible goes on to explain many other things that we need to do. So, on this subject, after a careful analysis of all the scriptures pertaining to the subject and the surrounding difficulties, we need to conclude that the spirits of men go into an intermediate state between death and the judgment. And so I'm going to attempt to confirm what some of you believe and try to change your mind if you think differently. But first things first. Johnny Ramsey wrote a very good point about this. Says, before delving into this matter fully, let me remind each of you that there is something far more important than what happens to us between death and the judgment. The truly significant point to be concerned with is this: will the life I have lived over on the earth result in the redemption of my soul in eternity? And he goes on to say, I have often told people that it is greater importance to be prepared on the judgment day than to worry about the state of the dead. Johnny was absolutely right. We do need to be concerned about getting to the right place. And really, the idea of what happens after we die before judgment really doesn't have any consequences. It's getting in the right state and right relationship with God before we die. And that's what we have to do. So, like I say, many people argue over the state of the dead and what they think will happen, yet they fail to prepare themselves for that event called judgment. All right. Okay. See, there's two major reasons that we believe the Bible teaches that our spirit go to an intermediate place called Hades after death and prior to eternity. And to me, they're quite convincing. Some people don't feel that way. But first of all, the great emphasis on the universal judgment day is mentioned throughout the New Testament. It's kind of hinted throughout the Bible. But in the New Testament specifically, Jesus talks about Matthew 25, beginning verse 36, about all the dead were standing before God to be judged. Everyone who ever lived standing in the great throne room to be judged. Of course, 2 Corinthians 5:10, we will all stand before the judgment seat of Christ. Romans 14:12, yes, we will all stand before the judgment seat, be judged, and we will all acknowledge Jesus Christ as Lord. And so Jesus talked about in John 5:28-29 about the resurrection of the dead to bringing out to judgment. Paul said the same thing, that at at the judgment time, all will be brought forth and resurrected, either to, if righteous, into eternal glory, or if wicked, into the torment. And then, of course, 2 Thessalonians 1, 4 through 10, talks about the great judgment scene where the retribution is going to be brought about upon all those who do not know God and keep not his commandments. And so we find abundant proof that all mankind will give a public answer for their conduct in their sojourn on earth. And immediately thereafter, after that judgment, the doors of eternal doom and everlasting righteousness open wide for those who have been wicked into that darkness, those who have been faithful into that great feast that God has prepared. And so this necessitates a realm for departed spirits, what we call the Hadean world, and prior to the judgment. Now, if our souls go directly to heaven or hell upon our separation from this life, the judgment day would be a farce. Not only that, the teachings in many passages would become a farce, and they would not be true. So, let's explain that. See, we know there's passages like the story of the rich man and Lazarus that we read in Luke 16, 19 through 31, and then 2 Peter 2, 4 and 2, 9, along with Jesus' answer to the thief in Luke 23. He stoutly affirms the existence of the Hadean world when he said, "You will be with me in paradise." And so, yes, that's pretty much stated there. And so, one problem that we have, see, the King James translation has thrown a lot of people off the track at this point by failing to distinguish between Hades and Gehenna. See, Hades being defined as the realm of the unseen or the realm of the dead, and we understand that to be divided in two parts. There's a division, a great gulf between where they cannot cross from one into the other. And then, of course, Gehenna, referring to the eternal abiding place of the wicked. So that is two different things, and sometimes the King James kind of mixes those ideas. And so the unrighteous are detained in one area where there is torment, and they're completely separate from the faithful. And Luke 16 tells us that story, rich man and Lazarus. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. See, at the consummation of Christ's reign, 1 Corinthians 15, 23 through 25 talks about the fact that Christ is going to reign, and then he's going to turn the kingdom back over to God. See, Christ has all authority now. And he was given this authority by God, and at the end of this earthly realm, Christ is going to give it all back to God. And of course, that's when the judgment is going to take place. See, the Hadean world, along with death, shall be abolished, and all mankind, both good and evil, shall stand in judgment before God. Now, in Revelation 20, in fact, I had it marked. I'm going to jump over here real quick, beginning in verse 12. And I saw the dead, the great and the small, standing before the throne, and books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the 10th book of life. And the dead were judged from the things which were written in the books according to their deeds. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and the death and Hades gave up the dead which were in them, and they were judged, every one of them, according to their deeds. And death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. This is the second death, the lake of fire. And if anyone's name was not found written in the book of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire. That right there tells you that Hades exists. I mean, so if Hades doesn't exist, as some people put forth, then this passage is wrong, as well as several of the other passages that we've already mentioned. So, at the time sentence will be given, and the wicked shall depart to be with the devil and his angels, as Jesus described, Matthew 25:41, while the righteous shall enter in through the gates into the city, the eternal abiding place of the redeemed. Revelation 22:14. So, that's what's going to happen. Now, to continue this discussion, because Paul said in Philippians 1:21 through 23 that he would rather die and be with the Lord than to remain on earth. This gives people the idea, yeah, I'm going to immediately go straight into heaven when I die. All right, we're going to look at that for a minute. See, if the Lord is in heaven and he is reigning there now, then when one dies, they go straight to heaven, or if they haven't been faithful to God, they will go straight to hell, and that's where they are. But I don't believe Paul was right in stating that, but he wasn't entirely wrong either. So let me explain. So I believe this is a matter of perspective. See, now we understand and we believe that there will be a great day of judgment where all souls will be brought before God and judged. If what some teach is that all the dead souls will be yanked out of heaven and hell and judged again, no, it does not make a lot of sense. So, for the living, we understand the souls to be waiting in paradise or torment, and we will join them when we die or when the Lord returns. And we know he's going to return. That's what he says. And then everyone is going to be judged before all. So the Bible makes that plain and simple. Every act will be brought to judgment. We read that even in the Old Testament. And so for the person who dies, they will not perceive time any longer. They will not perceive any existence any longer. And they will not be aware of anything. You know, in Ecclesiastes 9:10, it says the dead will have nothing to do. They will have no activity, and they will not know anything in Sheol, and which is the realm of the dead in the Hebrew language. Sheol, Hades, is basically the same thing, just different cultures and different languages. Now, some people might call this soul sleep, and yeah, to a degree, that's a good way of describing it, because it's like, when you lay down, you go to sleep at night, you wake up, there's a brand new day, you've had 7 or 8 hours sleep. For some of us, we get interrupted sleep, but still, I mean, when we die, it's going to be like, okay, you're just going to go and then wake up. So the moment I die, unless it is that final day, from my perspective, I will be standing before God being judged and immediately transferred either into heaven or hell. And so now those of us who are still living, we are waiting to join those souls in Hades. And then, like I say, but since the scripture says that the dead know nothing, then we're not aware of anything. And so we will be immediately, when we die, we will be immediately standing before God being judged along with everybody else who has ever lived, or we might add, who will ever live. We will all be standing there in that great judgment day in that great hall being judged. And it's not like it's going to take, billions and billions of people, each one being judged. It's not going to take, we're not going to stand in line and go through this. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15, it's all going to take place in the twinkling of an eye. Now, how is that possible? Because God has already established the standards and parameters of our salvation and our judgment. And so, like we said earlier, the way we live, it will determine. So once we die, our destiny is going to be sealed. So it's basically those on the left, as described in Matthew 25, they're going to be ushered off into the place of darkness. Those on the right will be going to his eternal rest and be told, well done, good and faithful servant. Now, one more thing about Luke 16. Jesus told the story of the rich man Lazarus. We see that the rich man was in torment, while Lazarus in a place of comfort. You know, it is possible that the dead in Hades could experience either pain because of their wickedness or comfort because of their faithfulness. But it would last, really, from their perspective, only a second before they stand before God and are judged and rushed into one of those gates. Now, which gate are you going into? Well, That will be dependent upon the choices you make, whether you seek to serve the Lord. So don't get all upset or make a big issue about what happens when we die. What you really need to concentrate upon, what happens before we die. I mean, that's what's going to really matter, where we're going to end up. And whether we're aware of Hades, we're not given that information from the scriptures. If we're aware of the comfort that we'll be in or the pain that we'll be suffering. I mean, that's really the only thing we're going to see, because we know the rich man saw Lazarus over there, but Abraham said he's in a place of comfort. So, and if Lazarus was really a righteous man, as where he ended up, he would have felt sorrow for that rich man. So there will be no sorrow in heaven. So yes, all those dead and righteous, they're going to be basically shielded from anything that would cause tears or pain or crying or anything like that. So just think about some of these things. And like I say, it's a matter of perspective. From whose perspective? From the living, we're going to join all others in Hades, but when the Lord comes, we'll all stand before God in judgment. The dead, I mean, they don't know what's going on. They're not aware of it. All the way from Adam and Eve, all the way up till now, they've been in this waiting place. But it will be when they died, for their perspective, they will immediately be standing before God in judgment. So, I mean, it's kind of difficult, but it's a matter of perspective. But when you read all the scriptures of the Bible, you'll get this information. And so study it for yourself if you want to, if you agree with what I say, or if you kind of don't agree. I mean, yes, you can state your opinion, and in some ways, yes, you'll be correct. But in other ways, you might be going against something that is written in the Bible. So it's up to you how you want to take this lesson. And so, but think about these things. I know there's been a lot of books written on this. There's been a lot of different thoughts and ideas presented. But if you'll just take the time to read what the Bible says, then it's going to be good. So consider those thoughts. That's going to be our lesson for today. Ask that you have a good day, a blessed day. Do something for the Lord. Definitely you're going to thank Him. I would hope you would thank Him for what He's done for you and everything that He's done for you, and that you will ask Him for your help and for our safety and to guide us. And of course, He's already done that through His Word, but we just have to pick up our Bibles and start reading to understand what He wants us to know. Everything He wants us to know is given to us. If it's not written in the Bible, then it doesn't matter. It's not for us to know. And God's not going to hold us accountable for anything that He doesn't want us to know. So consider all these thoughts and have a good and blessed day. And Lord willing, we'll be back again tomorrow. All right, see you then. Bye-bye for now.